Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got an awesome guest today. He's a UI UX designer with a passion for creating beautiful, useful experiences that communicate with intent and authenticity. He's an award-winning multidisciplinary designer and has worked in print design, advertising, and gaming. At PlayStation, he's been an integral part of two global product launches, the PlayStation Store and the next-gen console for PS4. Please join me in welcoming Trevor Jones. Welcome, Trevor.
Thanks for having me on board, Thomas.
My pleasure. Ready for 20 questions?
Let's do it.
Great. Number one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Yeah, I like to have teams that are creative. I really like this idea of fostering creativity and creating an environment where like a lot of ideas can flourish. Right now, I'm director of design at an ed tech company, and I really like the idea of having a bunch of voices in a room to talk about ideas and then, producing like a large volume of stuff. I like that. I like that in design, and I like that in like, whether it's like art or design. I love that, like putting a lot of volume and a lot of ideas that you can kind of start to chip away at to get to something. And I like I like that sort of unknowingness of, coming in with like a lot of ideas and then kind of parsing through them and, having my designers, like hearing them talk about what they're observing. I really like that. I like hearing about where others, like where they're at, like how they're viewing something and what they're looking at. I think it's a really fascinating concept. And I think that like creativity is one of these things that is, I think it's an interesting phenomenon of like the state that people get into as designers. And I really like that part of our work, and having more of that between designers and like other teams that you're working with or with clients. I really like that that part of design. That's kind of a bit of like the juice of what I love the most in what I do.
Great. Just a note for our audience, Trevor and I met 2 decades ago now in art school where we were both studying communication design.
Yeah. That was back when like CDs were a thing. We were listening to music on CDs, and the internet was like this very confusing place where Amazon sold books.
Yeah, I was very happy to have a computer with a DVD player in it. That was good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Number 2, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
Key piece of knowledge. Well, I don't know. There's actually like a quote that like my before I went to design school, I went to business school, and I played volleyball for the varsity team. And there's like there's a quote that my coach said that was something to the tune of like, he's giving this instruction, and it was, the game isn't won when things are going exactly like you practiced it or exactly the way it ought to go. The game is won in all the weird situations that are happening that you are responding to and winning in like these really tough, strange points. And I think that that's also true with like a lot of things. I think it's especially true with design when it comes to like process, that, there's a quote unquote, a design process that, you can map out, I think theoretically, and then in reality, it looks like a total rat's nest at times. And I think that there's always scenarios in design where when things are, yeah, you're always facing like something. It's either like there might be like a pushback in the design from like either a client or someone in the team or from the requirements, or money starts to go thin, or the idea, a lot of things are changing all the time. And I think that's where there's a lot of barriers towards for good design. And it takes I think a certain sense of like resilience to like see that, so like for good design to flourish, it has to go through so many like sort of obscure checkpoints to get through. And yeah, and it's all these weird scenarios that you never thought that's going to make something great. It's kind of being able to just deal with those like quickly, and not like kind of accept certain excuses or whatever you want to call them that's getting in the way. Yeah.
Yeah, we recently had Dr. Ron Walkari on the show, who wrote a book about more than human worlds. And at that time, I think human-centered design was very much in the focus. And, I never heard from anyone, or I certainly hadn't thought that it would evolve into more than human-centered worlds. Like that was a real kind of curveball. And I remember, of course, the user-centered design methodologies, and no one ever really kind of talking about human-centered design until they did, and until that became a thing. So yeah, so much of it is, these unexpected curveballs.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that come in, I think with design, like in terms of like, yeah, how like we're thinking about making things, and then there's tools that change, and then there's all the platforms. And I would say that like this industry is something that like over the course of my career, it's like my career looked nothing like what it did years ago. Like nothing, not at all. Like even in design, like can float around between these different disciplines. And I think it's there's always something like you're like, oh, I didn't anticipate that. Like I really did not see that one coming. And yeah, I think that's a fun place to be. And it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things to be. It can be like, it's just kind of dealing with like how the myriad of ways that problems can go wrong. And I think the design has a bit of like a extra sort of layer to it, because the actual profession changes so much too.
Yeah, for sure. Number 3, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I mean, I like creative thought and creative thinking and creative expression. I think that's I like it when people are in that state of being creative. I don't think that, yeah, because creativity isn't like necessarily like, oh, designers are creative. Like I think that could be true or not true. But I think that everyone is creative, and it's just a question of like, what is that like for you? And I like knowing that. I like knowing I like knowing that about someone, and I like kind of like cultivating that in a project when it like requires something that's like an idea like comes out, and it's usually like someone really maybe taking a risk at expressing it, and I like that, like encouraging that environment.
Awesome. We recently had John Maeda on the show, who of course talks about business and tech and design. You were really early on. I mean, you were really early on with combining business and design. Now that's such a kind of an obvious thing to do, but when we were in school, that wasn't.
Yeah, I remember after I went to business school, I was like, oh, I want to go to like art school or like design school. But I was like, sports kind of took my first, like I had the time, and, I was only going to be that age once to see if I could do that. But I would have loved to have business and design or something like that as a combo. And it actually got offered at U of A. I think it was the same, it was the same year that I got accepted to like Emily Carr. And I was like, oh, now they did it. And I was like, damn, it looked like a pretty good curriculum too. I was like, well, I'm doing it the long route, I guess.
Yeah. Number 4, what does your future look like?
Oh man. Um, I wish I could say. I would man, I think it depends how far out you want to go. If you're gonna say like in the next like 10 years, I would say I have no idea. I don't know if I can even predict in the next 5 years. I'm kind of in the midst of this inquiry right now, like what is next? And um, I'm working with a coach on this, and I'm starting to chip away at things that I'm really liking to do. Um, you know, I like I like being able to kind of like visualize like sort of like frameworks and stuff like that, like this kind of thing. And I also like to have like an artistic side. And I'm kind of straddling sort of these two worlds right now. So right now it's going to be one of these things where I'm like continuing to like develop like the skill as in product design, or maybe kind of finding some way of really having more of just that free form like expression of like drawing or music. And I started not producing music, but I started to like mix music, like everybody's a DJ now. And so I'm really liking that. I want to find ways of still having that, whether that's my uh, career or just like having more fun with it myself.
Great. I've mentioned this before, but it would have been a year or two now ago that Don Norman was talking about how he was going to invest in the bigger opportunities, things like climate or pandemic, rather than solving the everyday problems as a designer so often does. And I feel like that's kind of taken hold now a little bit more with areas like Design Futures, where designers are being like, yeah, maybe we're called on for bigger issues now, for bigger future focused issues. I think it's interesting to the uncertainty of the future now, and how often my guests don't have an answer for this question. It's like, yeah, I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, I mean, right now, so I'm working in an ed tech space, and that a lot of these like big problems that I think really have like a benefit are big problems because there's not a lot of process behind, like they're very large problems, and it's like it takes people who are really like, including designers, who are willing to kind of stick to it and really get that designers are a part of like design or like solving a problem, but there's a lot of other people that can be doing work that's not directly in design that supports that. And I think that's really, I don't think that's really known. It's like there's kind of understanding design and who can all be a participant in it, and it's not just like designers are the main participants, and they're like they can be like facilitating what's needed for them to do their work. And I think that knowing that is and then being able to stick and to have a resilience to kind of stick through all of the hurdles that are upstream just before good design can even happen. There's a lot of like things that are happening that want good design. Like there's a design something. There's something that's being created that is going to create some sort of value, and it just what it takes to do that. It is understanding more about design and how everyone has a role in it somehow.
I remember, I think it would have been fourth year in art school that I had a class specifically around good design. Who knew that it would be such an important consideration down the line?
Yeah, I mean, we're used. Yeah, like design is like becoming a little more like apparent, right? Like it's in our phone. Like our phones are like, we talk about the design, and we can really get into the details now because the improvements are like smaller and smaller, but we can kind of see like everyone's kind of paying attention to that. It's kind of there, you know. There's a lot of like design tools for like non-designers who kind of get them started, and there's like actually like pre-baked, quote unquote good design to a certain point. But so there's more familiarity with it. But there's definitely not a deeper understanding, because and that's like in a process sense. There's some companies get it and some don't. And I think that the ones that get it, those ones are, if you look at the data, those are like they're historically successful companies, because they're solving problems in a different way.
Great. Number 5, maybe unique to this podcast. Let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
The notion of place?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how if I'm taking like where I am working, the location, like the geographical location, plenty. Yeah, I spent my summer up on Vancouver Island actually this summer, and I loved it there. I love just being out in nature and knowing that like I can be on screen and then like put my laptop down, be in a river, and just be out away from like an urban environment. And by the same token, like there's times when I love being like in a busy place, or like in San Francisco, where there's a place where there's a large community of people who are in this industry of sorts in a variety of ways. And that's nice. I enjoy that. And I also like to just be totally away from that and get away from like the energy of that, because it's definitely got a hustle part to it. And I want to be able to have that in a different environment, so it's not like all hustle all the time. It's like I can do my thing and then have that contrasting just like beauty in nature, and have that available. I think there's a lot for me in that I love, that is really good for me, and it's very good, I think, for designers. Well, I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from it, especially as designers, going out in nature and just going to see how things actually work. It's a really fun thing.
I've often kind of commented on this question about place by saying during pandemic time, being in India teaching a class, but from Vancouver remotely, and then being in a conference in Europe at the same time, and maybe teaching a class locally in Vancouver at the same time, like 3 different geographic locations at the same time. But I like this idea of like a post-pandemic kind of, being on your laptop in your home, and then going into the river. And I think, as we kind of shift into this idea of not necessarily having to be in the big cities, maybe those kinds of realities are going to become more common.
Oh, they definitely are. I mean, I know that in San Francisco, there was like there was an exodus, right? Like there was a fairly high exodus of folks who came here for their work. And, there's a lot of factors that play into just like the price point of the city is, you don't have to spend $5,000 a month for a tiny apartment. You can go somewhere else and just be in a beautiful location. And that I just think that's fantastic. And yeah, and being remote does have challenges. Like it is I do think it's harder to for communication, where you can't just put everyone in a room for a little while and people are talking. People can have side conversations, and there can be someone talking, like three groups could have side conversations at the same time versus this one at a time talking. And it's like, I know we could do breakout rooms and all that kind of stuff, but there's just something missing with like the without having like the digital rules of a video app there. It's people just talk how they talk, and we kind of have to have this sort of altered way of speaking. And then when you're done with the call, then you're literally by like, you're around nobody. And that's a really like at the end of a meeting, sometimes you kind of end up walking, talking to someone, and you're just like hanging out for lunch to kind of like discuss something that we didn't understand. That's just way harder now.
Yeah. At the time of this recording, the Meta Quest Pro just recently came out, and of course, ideas around VR workspaces and workrooms is something that people are talking about as well now. I wonder what kind of future we'll have in that kind of space.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, if you want to go to the next question, I think just really quickly about that, I would just say yeah, I'm curious too. I feel like we've done this before, and I think it's a question of how can we wade through what's going to be a first V1 that isn't like the last time where everyone kind of saw it and bailed. There's got to be something to kind of overcome that hurdle.
Absolutely. Number 6, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
I think it would just be like have fun in a way that's like, I would say there's certain things that, yeah, like when I'm younger, when things were important, like things that I deemed important, whatever that may be, like design school was important to me. Like I really wanted like to learn and do good stuff. And there's things back in business school that I really wanted to do that were deemed important. And I think the thing that I would say is have fun with that too. It's like sometimes there's like a bit of I would get serious about something, and I'm like, it's like always finding that, like, just have fun with it. Like, and I think that's like just being in that more of that state makes better stuff, makes for a better way of working, and just overall better for you. I would say. I mean, part of that is like being a designer. I think oftentimes just like the critic, we often deal with like, oh, I don't like this, or this sucks. And that's like, I think that's something that, comes in the territory with a creative profession, when a lot of your work is like not like you're developing things that's like no, and you have to get used to like a lot of things being a no. And sometimes it is it's like that can still happen, and you can still just kind of have a bit of a smile on it too, and just be like, this is it, like this is what it's like. You don't have to get all, it's not getting upset over that. It's not a statement about you as a designer. It's just like, oh, it's not working right now. Okay. So I think when I was younger, I was much more like I was a little more concerned about that.
For some reason, I remember this conversation you and I had 20 years ago. You were talking to me about how you had started a t-shirt company, and thought it would be great, and it ended up being like you were packaging t-shirts and mailing them out. Like that was the primary kind of part of your company, or that work was mailing them out, and you were kind of this distributor in a way. And maybe that kind of speaks to the necessity of the fun that should be part of what we're doing.
There's like, I might be doing something that might be like a rather rote task, but it's like, it's kind of like, we do things in our lives that it's like, whether it's that, but like I'm doing it for like, I like this idea of like someone getting an illustration that I put on a t-shirt, they're going to wear it. I like that idea. And it's kind of in service of that, right? Like we do things for our partners that are like, I don't like to do the dishes, but I would do the dishes because I would care about the relationship. So yeah, it's like framing what you're doing. If it's like, oh, why do I have to do this like menial design task? And it's like, there's got to be something that I think that is a goal, or a mission that is higher than the menial task. And that's important to know, I think.
Great. Number 7, what's a day in your life like?
Um, Gosh, lately it's been I've been staying up a lot later lately. Um I get up, I have not I have these like I'll say all my mornings go in like probably like 3 to 6 months. Like my mornings go in 3 to 6 months sort of um like phases. Just what I eat or don't eat in the morning. Sometimes lately I've not been working out, but I have moments where I would go for like a workout or a run in the morning. Um, and then it's mostly like meetings and for throughout the day, um, a lot of them. And then in between that, it is a lot of yeah, like kind of it's more like sketching out. Like there's a lot of um, kind of like what occurs like complex problems that you need to kind of just like distill down into like a visual understanding for people to get. And so I'll be doing that. And um yeah, and then after that, after work, it's a mix of like a bit of heads downtown, but a lot of just like, meeting and talking about other projects. And after that, I'm going out with friends. I am uh I'm going for a walk. I am going on a date. I am cooking a lot more. Yeah, it varies like or there's something kind of happening. Concerts are starting to come back into play, and I've been really enjoying live music a lot more. It's like we couldn't hear it for like 2 years. I've been a bit more interested in that.
It's interesting. I'm reminded of my time working at Lenovo in Beijing, and I remember at work, we would be working on these um, idea pads, which were a notebook that Lenovo made for creative tasks that were pretty useless. I couldn't really do anything on them. And so I would be in meetings a lot during the day or sitting in front of this idea pad, really getting nothing done. And then kind of go home at the end of the day, jump on the MacBook, and then that's when the real kind of design work happened.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how unexpected our days in the lives can be as designers. We have these ideas early in our lives, but it's so different than that.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean your experience of like being in Beijing was like it's like when I was at PlayStation and we would go to Tokyo like every like month, like every like 5 weeks or so. And yeah, just like the way of working there is meetings all day and then going out. I personally do not know how the designers there, how they actually have to get down and do their work. Is you meet and just present it, there's presentations, and then there's not a lot of decisions that are really being made, and then you're going out and establishing relationships and building trust. It's a much different way of working than here in the States, or like North America even, where the relationships are the thing and the communication is much more softer in terms of um, yeses and nos. And somewhere after that end meeting barrage for your whole day and then going out with the team and then getting to know them, happening that on a fairly recurring basis, I don't understand where like the actual rubber meets the road with like the design work, how they do that. It's pretty amazing. But totally different way of working, and I'm still like in awe of that.
Well, I mean, Trevor, you and I know how, going through design school, going through art school, how fast you get with the tools, how quickly you're able to kind of churn stuff out and get it in front of people. Like that's what you kind of become faster and faster at that if you're in this world, I think.
Yeah, no, true. No, that's very true. The tools are much better, and I think that's been very helpful. I think that the yeah, that is much help. That is very helpful. I think that there's a certain level of there's a certain level of like, I think to kind of really get deeply involved with something, but there is a sense of time with that sometimes. I think that's where it's like, you really like, sometimes when you're on a roll with something, that can sometimes happen and not. And when that does happen, that can just kind of like sweep you. And I think that is like a odd, like that's a really great moment. I think when you're able to just kind of sit down, and you're like, wow, I really got a lot of like things that we can do and just really crushing it. Sometimes like that's a 3 hour block, easy 3 to 4 hour block.
Mhm.
And allowing for that, I think sometimes is quite important to have that, like, it might not happen every time, but it's like when you want to be able to at least allow, like, I think sometimes for the possibility of that.
Great. Number 8, lifelong learning is a popular topic these days. How do you stay up to date?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's like understanding the like new there's new like design processes that are like coming into fold, like around, we're always kind of looking at like what's a new design method that is, there's agile, if it's not agile or lean or whatever we want to call it, or um design thinking, or I like to kind of know like new ways of making things that are improvements on what occurred to me right now as like collisions between an engineering methodology and a design one that kind of smash together, and they don't necessarily jive all the time. So the process stuff, I would say technology wise, I had a real resistance. Like I think when I originally I think Sketch was coming out, I was like, for some reason got really shy about it. And I felt like I was like a year behind on that. And I realized that these are really, yeah, they're great tools. And then just learning more about people. And I like to do a lot of sort of like more personal growth stuff that is about how I'm relating to people. If I'm like wanting to be a leader, who am I being to be a leader? And my relationship to like my community, my friends, and like my designers, and other people that are like in a project that I'm working on is, I like to kind of understand, like, yeah, who I'm being in that moment. And it's like, that to me is like the most critical thing. It's not how to handle a situation. It's more like, am I being a dick? am I, am I like really wanting to get to understand this person, or am I just saying that so I can just, speak to my agenda?
Mhm.
I calling myself out on that, I think is, yeah, I like that part of the thing is really critical. Like the relationships and the way you're like speaking about the work or to people, I think is really, really important. I'd say that's arguably more important. Then there's the actual work, and then there's the framing around it, which comes through the designer, or like the designer speaking to it in a way that is going to be engaging.
Yeah, I love how you're talking about people so much and the conversations with people and how big a role that plays. I'm kind of foreshadowing one of the later questions, but our guests often talk about getting inspired by people and that being the number one thing.
Yeah.
Number 9, what tools do you use? Are you entirely digital?
These days, yeah. And I wish it was less. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think I use like, I think fairly standard tools, like, but everything is for me on the screen. Occasionally I like to sketch things out on paper, like in a sketchbook. But I do find that, like, yeah, I gotta say, like, digital tools, like, I don't have to worry about my crappy writing, crappy lettering. I can make something and I can like call it up at any time. through devices, and I can replicate something so easily that there's a real, like, this is such a pull for it for me. On the flip side, like anytime I'm writing something down, I feel like it sticks with me a little bit longer, at the expense of not having it available. So yeah, right now tech has really been winning in that department.
Yeah, I think, the digital tools are so interesting. I just recently saw a second posting about how someone had started a business using free digital tools, and they would list their stack of tools of 15 or 20 free to use tools, and when you combine these, you basically have a business. And I think digital has really evolved in that way.
Yeah, the tools are pretty amazing. They're very they're getting into like actual, like, you know Figma as an example was like just perfect for saying like you can make anything with like the creative suite. But then they just said, look, for this particular, like, for especially for product designers and like sketching out things that can have like low fidelity but really then also high fidelity, is but it's geared towards just changing a few things. I thought that was such a great like example of like how we can really get into the very specific tools that are solving like actual problems that you'd really have to know what's going on there. And then they're getting a little more, they're getting niche, and they're really supporting like different kinds of like design pipelines and stuff. And I think that's really cool.
Nice. Halfway, number 10, how do you deal with work-life balance?
Yeah, I for me, it's I I just kind of tend to work until I don't want to, and sometimes that all depends. It's like I don't mind kind of sitting in front of like doing work, whether it's either personal stuff or in my regular gig, but I tend to just do it until something will, I have some things that I want to accomplish, and if I'm feeling good about it, I'll pull myself away, and it's like I'm done. And sometimes that's longer and sometimes it's not. So I just yeah, it's important to take breaks, and I do like to do that. So I just find a way of like building that in.
Nice. Number 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
I would be oh man, I think I would be, I don't know, I always just one thing that I've thought one time was like, I always like thought about being like a comic book artist. And yeah, maybe I would do that. I would like, it's this weird thing where like I don't really read them that much, but I like what they look like, and I just I don't know. I think it would be interesting to try that.
Nice. What would you not like to do career-wise?
Oh wow. Uh anything that requires doing the same thing over and over, whatever that is. It's like if I was to do that, that would say that just to me is the worst thing I could possibly imagine.
What's your favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Um uh I would just say, I don't even know if this is even a quote. It's like, I don't know. Maybe said, I would just say like it's make a lot of things.
Mm,
Yeah, I just think that uh there's, I'd say like a design is like a conversation. Like you can talk, and then there's also a communication, just like the making, and like you're saying, like it's visual, like especially as like screen design, we're saying something. And I would say that analyzing, going maybe this, maybe that. It's like you can either speak about it, but really at the end of the day, it's like everything starts when you put it down and you just make a bunch of stuff of like, it could be this or this or this, and you're kind of doing that, you're saying something, like you're showing yourself and you're just getting the conversation going. And I think make a lot of things is a good one for me.
Yeah, in our episode with John Maeda, he specifically said he likes making things like so general but so true, right?
Yeah, right. And I think that's the thing. I was like, I do think there's like a bit of there's a there I think there's like there has to be that innate like joy in that in somehow. And if that is not there, whatever that is, like there has to be some joy in that practice that is the joy in that practice, and also then the understanding that like I still believe that like, yeah, designers are throwing out most of their work in search of like that thing that's making it great, or the idea, whatever it is. And the making a lot of things, and also just being with no, this is, or like, or changes, and being able to just be resilient, and just get that's part of the that's a part of the that's a part of the part of the job. And a lot of people don't have that, and I think that's, their work is being critiqued, and that's like something to be with. It's not an easy thing, but I think that there's learning to get that critique is not a statement about you.
Do you have a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Yeah, I think it would be like a situation. It'd be like a situation where if somebody from some other team comes in and they have like, say, a sketch or a wireframe of something, and they say, hey, can you guys do the UX? Someone told me, I've heard that a few times, or some version of that sort of phrase. And at that point, I'm like, that's like, I don't know how, there's like so many angles to tackle that is like not, it's such a, yeah, just leads to a monster set of question marks, and usually a lot of long conversations.
Yeah, it's funny, design kind of evolved, and everyone started saying design is not just about making something beautiful. And then we moved into UX, and UX evolved, and now we kind of have to say, yeah, you can't just tack UX on. I feel like that, as design becomes dinner table conversation, we need to kind of clarify that more often than we like to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. I would say, even like for my favorite quote, just reminded me of one that I saw the other day, which is design is often the career that you have to fight to do the job that they hired and paid you for. I was like, I really like that one. I see that's being true, and like in a lot of scenarios that it's there's that real, and it's tricky. It's tricky.
15, if you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would you choose?
One word. I would say loving. Yeah, it's somewhere that loving or deep, something like I would there's a certain amount of like, yeah, like I like doing things that I love, and if that's not there, then things just don't work for me.
16, what keeps you up at night?
Oh wow. Nothing really. I'm a really good sleeper. But if I am ever up, it would be something where I feel like I am really gonna bomb at, and look like and I have a fear of like, I've got something tomorrow that I fear that I'm gonna bomb, and I fear that I'm gonna look like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Final stretch, number 17, what's the dream you're chasing?
The dream, that yeah, I think it goes back to like the creativity thing. I love creating scenarios, or even if it's a thing that I'm making that has people has like that has people like in this like a creative state. I think there's something about the merging of like um action and play that and in yeah, being in action and with play, with like some, whether it be like problem solving in there, the collision of all of that is, I think, really cool. And I like it when I'm like that, and I like it when others are like that. So whatever I'm doing, I want that to kind of happen either by virtue of the making of the thing, or if the thing itself can uh instigate that.
Great. 18, what inspires you?
um yeah, lately it's nature. I love going, yeah, I just love being out there. I love the, there's so much to see and hear, and it's like uh it is the, it's like the thing that is like um there's like, nature just works how it does, and it's not right or wrong, and it's kind of always good to be back out in there with, this is the way it's always like this. It just kind of has its own way of working, and there's nothing wrong, inherently wrong with it. And I like just kind of going out there and being reminded of that, and it is inspiring to like not make any problem I'm thinking is really big, and just go out there and go, you know what, like it's not. It may seem like a big thing, and it's not to make light of it, but in the scheme of things, like things work out.
I took up kayaking a couple of years ago, and whenever I go up to Deep Cove to kayak, and whenever I go out on the water there, it just feels so magical, and I'm like, there's really no kind of VR experience that kind of does that in that way, not yet anyways. So I love that. I love your answer, nature.
Yeah.
19, any advice you'd like to share?
um I mean, I mentioned, I think before, like have fun, like the fun part is critical. I would say that like uh that there's a mix of like thinking, like design thinking is like a thing, or wherever, the designers are thinkers in a lot of ways. And I think that there's oftentimes a really good strong case for like your heart or your gut. And there's a part of that I think it's really important to get that part too, that making something and thinking about it, and then there's a gut, sometimes there's like a gut call, or like your heart or your gut kind of speaks. And I really would think that's like a very, very important thing to listen to. And a very amazing thing if you can communicate that and people go, yeah. Because it's easy for like logical things, but if you can communicate something that's like more of like your sense, and really be able to explain that, because it kind of can occur as irrational, and get someone to be like, really be like, yeah, I get that. That's a really great skill to have.
I love that you put that into words. That's something that happens to me, that, yeah, definitely, like sometimes you have an irrational idea that's occurred to you that is right, and how can you communicate that? How can you share that? How can you build camaraderie around that?
Yeah, and I think, with that, even, yeah, exactly. And even when you like, is how do you communicate it? I think even being with that is really good, to like even just say like this idea, and it's like, I want to kind of help, like how to communicate this. And even by like communicating, sometimes you get a role where like, I just don't know how to like capture this, but I wanted to tell you this. And that's it's a great to not have that, but it's also like good to also just be in like the I don't know part of this, and um and have people like on board to kind of like, you want to articulate it, and maybe they can help because they can identify with it too.
Perfect. And number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you? How do we follow you?
I am, I mean, I'm on Instagram. I'm on like the socials. I'm on Facebook with to a relatively abandoned account. I'm on Instagram, which I frequent very infrequent. I post every now and then. But I feel like there's something that Instagram, for some reason, I like it. Like there's parts of it that I go through like, oh, this is cool. And then there's times where I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I go in and out of social media. My handle is Trevor is here. And then I also have one of like drawings of like Trevor is drawing that has also been a little abandoned over the last few years. I'm on SoundCloud at Trevor is here. And well, I'm in San Francisco, so I've got, I'm here, and if anybody gets in contact with me through there for whatever reason, if they wanted to be talk about moving down here, or if you are just passing through, it's always good to see folks in the design community. Yeah, those are my primary channels right now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being on. I mean, after all these years, to reconnect is one thing, but of course, to amplify your work around PlayStation and what you did with that, I think is really good for the audience, and is exciting to hear about, and really exciting to hear about kind of this way that your work life kind of comes together. Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Thomas. I appreciate it.